Hello, welcome to the one and only Exodus Now podcast. I'm your host, Justin Fox, with Pastor Smart Keith.
Hey, what's going on?
And, stopping in a little bit later, we may have another special guest come in. And that'll be an interesting thing to mix things up. So, we're just going to go ahead and believe for some amazing stuff, because some authority is going to come out tonight. Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen.
So we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. So the topic that the Holy Spirit gave us for today are the following, which is being courageous, being brave, being objective, and being bold. So we're going to start with the first one, which is being courageous. So what do you think about, Jamar, when you hear being courageous? What does that mean? Because there seems to be a difference between this topic and the next one, which is being brave. So what is being courageous?
So I'm going to have to plead ignorance on this one. I know what it means to be courageous, but I would have mixed courageous with brave. This makes me wonder why I didn't bring my concordance in, because I'm sure there's a biblical difference. When I think of courage, though, let me finish that thought. When I think of courage, I think of someone who does what is right, which is a little bit different from bravery. I guess when I think of bravery, I think of someone who is aggressive in battle. But courage is just doing what's right, even in the face of opposition to that. And I feel like we touched on that a little bit in Bible practice tonight.
Yeah.
The importance of, even in the face of sharp opposition, being firmly rooted and grounded in the vision, revelation that God has given you, in the Word of God, the Bible, and then being bold enough, right? Being aggressive enough to just push through with whatever it is you know to be right, even if you know that the pushback will be harsh and sometimes even deadly.
Yeah, so here's some terms here. So if you hear me clicking in the background, that's me looking things up. Deal? Anyway, but getting some words here. I can't stand this website right here because Bible Hub kind of jumbles all the definitions together. But anyway, it's not all that helpful. But anyway, we have and one people shall be stronger. It's more of a verb. So this is what I was assuming was that courageous is being more of a verb and being brave is more of a state of mind.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So
I can see that.
Yeah. So courage is. So you always tell someone, to be brave, but you always look at someone who said he had courage, and you think about the courageous thing that he actually did.
Yeah.
Men and women of courage. So when I'm thinking about courage or being courageous, I'm not 1,000% sure that we're being courageous in terms of us being out in the world, like for a believer being out in the world, right?
Yes.
So I am hesitant to kind of go in, because it's easy to go on or go off in the church and everything, right? It's easy to do that, and I don't want to do that because there's supposed to be a love of the church. I think that a lot of times people will be like, oh, the church this and the church that, and even people in the church and blah 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 blah. And I don't want to get down that rabbit trail. But I do think that being courageous is a mandate for a believer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it seems to be closely tied to assignment.
Yeah. So if you're not courageous, so I had a brief word about this on, I think it was on IG, Instagram. It's on Justin Fox Media. check me out, holla. And Shamar Keith at Shamar Keith says at Twitter. Anyway, so but I was talking about this illustration. What if you had an assignment? You're a security guard, or maybe a police officer, or but you're guarding something valuable. What would happen if you just dropped that assignment? You just left, right? Or when the enemy came and was approaching you, so that you just got yourself like, nope, I ain't doing that, and you just left. And even though there's precious, maybe minerals, material, or something in the back that you don't want the enemy to have. You don't want an enemy to have these things. Let's put it that way. You don't want an enemy to have these things. And you just left. What are the implications of that? What is the implications, for example, if a bunch of terrorists came in and there's a bunch of guards at Fort Knox, for example, and you just kind of like, nope, and you just let them take the gold? What are the implications of that?
Yeah, so this is a perfect setup, right? I'm always looking for a good scriptural tie-in to what we're talking about. So, let me just take you to the book of Joshua, chapter 1. I'm going to read 2 verses. I'm going to read verse 1, and then I'm going to read verse 6. And I have not lost my place. I am going to answer your question about what happens when a person is not courageous in the face of genuine danger. So Joshua chapter 1. Joshua is the book that starts off where Moses ends. So Moses was a fantastic rabbi, was a fantastic general, liberated the people from Egypt, led them for 40 years up to the doors of the promised land, up almost to the gates, and then was taken home. Right? And why is kind of a whole different story, but just for today, let it be sufficient to say he was taken home. And so now his number 2 is coming into command. He's coming into his own. And so this is the conversation between God and Joshua. And so verse 1 gives the context for why God is going to say what he says in verse 6. Here's verse 1. I am in the ESV today, English Standard Version. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, I read verse 2, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise and go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I'm giving them to the people of Israel. Now, that is an introduction. We can jump down to verse 6. Here's verse 6. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause the people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. So, going back to when we said that courage seems to be closely tied to assignment, because Joshua is courageous, he causes the people to receive their inheritance. Right? So you cause the people to receive something that is promised or due to them. And so now answering your question, right, what happens when a terrorist comes in or somebody comes in and they are doing or promising to do bad and destructive things and nobody stands up? You cause the people to not stand up. Right? Because somebody has the assignment of courage in the room. At least one person, maybe more. But the person who has the assignment of courage, when they don't stand up, they cause the people to die, the people to be taken captive, the people to not rise up. Right? That's the response.
Yeah, that's actually a big deal.
Yes.
Now, it's one type of things where, you don't want it to be a big deal, because I think what we want to do, and saying we as in just anybody, is that we want to rationalize reasons why being courageous is not all that important.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's not affecting anyone else but me, or it's not affecting, I don't have to be this way.
Yep.
But at the same time, too, that's assuming little worth.
Yes.
So I'm not going to be on my guard in a heightened state if I'm guarding 2 quarters.
Yes.
You know, if I'm or 2 pennies, even just 2 pennies. I'm not going to be vigilant when guarding 2 pennies. But I am going to be vigilant if I'm guarding, you know, the entirety of the nation's wealth.
Yeah. Fort Knox.
Yeah, Fort Knox.
Although we're not on the gold standard anymore, but that is a different podcast. Focus.
So I think that if you, it's a. Do you think that being courageous is really tied a lot to self-image?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to what you were saying earlier, what would make someone not be on guard? What would make someone not be courageous? It is tied to how small they think they are, or how big they think they are, how insignificant they think they are, or how impactful they think that they are. And so I think it is directly tied to self-image. If you walk into a room and you see somebody robbing somebody else and you make the decision to not get involved, it is because you say, I can do nothing. I can in no way interfere with this situation. Me responding is inappropriate. There are all kinds of conversations you have to have with yourself to watch evil prevail and keep going. Mm-hmm. It is directly tied to self-image, yes.
Yeah, and I think that what probably is going to be the common thread with all of these is going to be a lot of self-image. Because when I was hearing from God, I heard more of a mandate on being, right? So I heard the word courage, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put on courage, and then but I saw it drawn out more. It said that being courageous, you know, embodying that, being that. So you can't be what you don't see yourself as.
Yes.
You know, so you can't see where you're not actually going if you're not actually looking in that direction. So I think that being courageous, what does that actually entail in terms of being that, embodying that?
So to answer your question most directly, the definition of being courageous is seeing yourself properly with your own eyes. I'm going to give you 2 scriptures that hit this hard. The first one is Proverbs. It is a warning. So Proverbs chapter 3, verse 7, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Right. So being wise in your own eyes will cause you to not fear God and to turn to evil. To say that a little bit more clearly, when you're talking about walking into a situation where someone is in danger and you have the ability to rescue them, to help them, to partner with them, to be free from danger, and you turn away from that, you are turning away from rescuing them to evil. Now, I'm going to push a little bit further. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 17. So this is a conversation between Samuel and Saul, the king. And God told Saul to completely wipe out the particular enemies that he was fighting. I always like to just say for clarity, don't think of this as God told King Saul to wipe out an innocent village. No. This is God told King Saul to take Hitler down.
Yeah.
Right?
Because we don't, you know, the Bible, as we kind of say, is kind of written in shorthand.
Yes.
You know, so the historical context with a lot of these people who God was telling to wipe out were like lots of child sacrifice, you know, and so they're killing their kids and they're doing this bad stuff.
Yes.
Really, really bad stuff.
Yes. So just...
And not like, you know, like women's rights type of stuff. I'm talking about, you know, they're like sacrificing their kid. Like they're plunging in a dagger into like their 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, you know, as a blood offering to like Moloch or whatever.
Yes. So, point of clarity, I'm going to go up a few verses. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 15. Paul said, they have brought them from Amalek. right, from the Amalekites. For the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction. For context, if memory serves, the Amalekites were the wicked people who had partnered with the devil, if I'm remembering the right ones. Right, so these are bad people. I won't go too far because I haven't done heavy research on this yet, but these are bad people. Here's what God says about Samuel and why he did not do what God told him to do. Verse 17. So this is Samuel now prophesying, speaking for the voice of God to the king Saul. And Samuel said, though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord appointed you king over Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go, devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. So on one hand, it says, right, it's all about how you see yourself. Because you see yourself like this, right, you turn away from evil. And King Saul, because he saw himself as little in his own eyes, when God gave him clear direction and clear command, he did not listen. He was not courageous. So what would have been courageous was to not go into battle, right? Because that's different. That's bravery, kind of what we were talking about there. What would have been courageous would have been to completely destroy the enemy and take not even the spoils. God considered even the spoils of these particular enemy to be too corrupt to take. Right, but he listened to the voice of the people. So the people were like, King, this is good gold, and those are cute women. So let's take the gold, let's take the animals, and let's take, right, slaves.
Yeah.
And because he saw himself as small, even though God saw him as king of Israel, he went with the voice of the people and was not courageous in his response.
So it's about setting standards based on how God sees you rather than how man sees you.
Yes. The most important man is you.
Right.
But yes.
Yeah. I think it's a very easy thing to overlook. It's a very easy thing, and I think the consequences. I think we think of consequences a little bit too literal, right?
Yes.
Or we think of consequences in not only the negative, but we think of consequences as only being like death, right?
Yes.
So, for example, I always like to use my Katy Perry example.
Okay.
My Katy Perry example. My Katy Perry example is that she was, pastor's kid and everything, right? And she started out doing, evangelical kind of music.
Yes.
Or Christian I don't know what's called.
And
K-pop.
she looked like she was. I mean, she really meant it. She was singing with her heart.
Yeah. So something happened. Someone or something dropped the ball. Not quite sure what it was.
Okay.
Could have been just her. That's a very strong possibility too.
Yep.
Because it says that the heart of man is desperately wicked, and who can know it? It also says that man is born with enmity towards God. So these are real things. Not denying that. But we don't think about consequence as in, because maybe someone, let's just say that someone did. Let's say that someone was supposed to say something to Katy Perry in her time of struggle, and they were supposed to deliver that message in love or whatever happened, and they didn't do it. Now what she does is that she now, as a consequence of that, she now leads people away versus leading people to. Yeah. So it's not about a consequence as in, someone's gonna die. That's dying go to hell. That's one thing, right?
Yeah.
A greater consequence is by not being courageous, the one that escaped from the hand of God now not only corrupts themselves, but other people around them too. And sometimes that stretches out not just to an immediate family or just one community, Sometimes it's in his entire state. Sometimes it's across an entire nation. Sometimes it's across an entire world. Because of one absence of someone not being courageous.
Yeah, I feel like because someone wasn't courageous with her, she lost her peace and perhaps led other people away from their peace as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That just, I don't know, that brings it home for me in a more clear way. That it wasn't just a matter of belief or not belief. It was a matter of peace.
Because that's the thing about it. Is like there's no peace without a true north. At least from what I've seen. So, if there's no peace for a true north, then without a true north, because everything's experimental.
Yes.
You know? So, because everything's experimental. But I think that if you at a certain point in time, you have to be held accountable to these type of things.
Yeah.
And I think that we, as believers, wouldn't want to think about the cost of not being courageous.
Yeah, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, it really is a horrible feeling. And I think that might be the thing, right? To really experience that, to really experience knowing that God told you to nudge to talk to that person and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
What were the implications of that?
Yeah, that's a terrible feeling.
Yeah. I remember actually yesterday. I remember there was a lady that was trying to open the doors of the church. This is at maybe like 11 o'clock at night or something like that.
Okay.
And I was like, oh man, she's trying to get in. Maybe she's trying to get help. Maybe trying to get shelter. Something. I don't know, maybe. And I see this, and I'm thinking, well, maybe she needs prayer. Maybe she's asking for prayer because something happened to her. So instead of me pondering this, I turned my car around, went over there, and was like, hey, are you okay?
Wow,
Do
man.
you need something? You know, this is not to wow me, because the reason why is because, you know, she's like, can I get a ride to the store? Nah. So, because, you know, that goes to me different directions, you know. Plus, with my wife, et cetera, right?
Right.
That goes to me directions. It really does. Some of y'all might think that's mean, but there's a difference between me feeding my ego by helping someone out versus actually helping them out. Yeah. The best thing I could have done in that situation is to give her prayer at that point in time. That's what I felt, at least in my spirit. So, turned back around and did that. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't want the trauma of sitting there trying to think about, you know, did I not say something right, or should I have turned around, and should I this? I don't feel like the enemy having given me that trap. That's all. I'm just gonna go ahead and turn back around, see that I prayed for her, all those good things, you know, and send her home. That's all I did.
Yeah. I think that's the right response, man.
Yeah.
You're taking me back to some times when I should have said yes but didn't. Should have been courageous but didn't. It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. The worst. So.
Yep, and it revisits you.
Yeah. And the enemy just uses that to just, you know, can use that to torment you all the time, you know, and it's not even worth it. Whatever it is that you wanted to do, or how bad you wanted to go home, or whatever, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, but that explains why God was like to Joshua, be courageous.
Yes.
Like, don't be led by the people, lead the people.
Yeah.
That's courage, when you lead the people.
Yeah.
And you see yourself as a leader.
Yeah. I think that's good. There's a lot to say about that. There's like a ton to say about being courageous, but I think that probably need to move on, because I think that there's going to be a weaving in and out, and there's going to be a revelation at the end of this that we need to get to, rather than trying to figure out everything within being courageous, what that actually means. Because I think that this is looking at a two-sided coin almost in 4 dimensions. That might be a better way to say it.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and move on then to being brave. Okay. Being brave. So we talk about being courageous, being brave. Again, I think that this is more of a state of mind. You know, this person is brave. And usually when someone's brave, it seems to be more social. Have you noticed that? Man, that might be just more of an American thing. I don't know. But you know.
How do you mean?
Well, remember when, despite how you feel about it, it's not really the question here. But when Kyle Jenner came out as being Caitlyn Jenner, and people were saying that was so brave. It seems to me, but soldiers, people like that, who actually were doing an action, they don't be considered to be brave. So like being brave seems to be more coming out in a social way of something than it is necessarily coming out in terms of an action way,
Yeah, I can see that.
But that might be us as Americans screwed up right now.
So when I think about bravery, I think about your ingrained response, how you respond to a given situation, a given stimuli. And so I can see how it will be social, right? Because most of our interaction is social. Socially, something happens, and then you have the social response of bravery. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So being brave is, it's the preparation. It's the mental work before the courage, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I have to think about it in that context, I think that being brave is, right, the precursor to bravery is good self-talk, because it prepares you for a proper response to whatever the stimuli may be, right? Whatever the input is, good self-talk causes you to have a brave response because you've already told yourself who you are and how you respond to certain situations.
Yeah, it's a program.
Yeah, it is a program. That's probably a good way of saying it.
Yeah. So because there's this program running, it has the capability, because of this software, it can launch this software. So basically, because of Windows or iOS, it can now launch these programs.
Yes.
Yes. From this OS, that can be done. Not necessarily from DOS. I mean, you can do DOS. But DOS is DOS, and Linux is Linux, Windows is Windows, iOS is iOS, But because of these things, you can run these things.
Yeah, so somebody who's brave, right, they have good programming, they've got a good operating system, they will be the first one, for example, you're skydiving, they'll be the first one to jump. Right, there's danger, you hear a gunshot, they're the first one to run to the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
On a more practical level, or perhaps on a less spiritual level, you see an attractive woman, you're the first one to go get the phone number. Right? But I think that's bravery too. I think there's a lot of bad programming around who you are and what you are capable of doing. And so bravery can be, I'm going to say, situational. Maybe you're brave at talking to women, but not brave in battle. Right, maybe you are brave in battle, but not brave in business. I mean, I can see how it will be situational, but I think in a good situation, the ideal situation, good programming causes you to be a well-rounded brave, good and properly responsive in all situations. That you are usually the guy who's the first to do it, or the girl who's the first to do it.
Yeah, and I think bravery unlocks a lot more for you in life.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it unlocks not only potential, but I think that also leads in a non-tangible way. So it's like, I don't know why I'm following this person, but I just am.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah, because you're attracted to their bravery.
right. It's like, I don't know what it is about that guy, but because a lot of people say the same thing about you, Jamar. Like, I don't know what it is about that guy. So
little old me.
Yeah, they have no idea. They have no idea why that is, but they can't really like put it into words. But it's just kind of like something about that person or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I think that goes back into confidence too.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too, right? So my innate response is little old me, but that's actually an unbiblical response. I think the proper response is to be confident that God has made you a leader. And I wonder, man, and I'm being creative here, but I wonder if that was what was attractive to Jesus about the disciples. Because the Bible seems to indicate that they were not the wealthiest, not that they were all poor. Well, actually, the Bible doesn't really talk about their financial state, so we don't know what they were, which means that for Jesus, that was not a factor. So he was not concerned about their wealth. The Bible mentions nothing about how good looking they were, right? All that's off the table. We don't know what their wives or their children were like. All that, again, is off the table, although I would have put that pretty high on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even considered one of the qualifications for being a deacon or an overseer, a bishop. But what those guys were was brave. So Jesus walks up to a group of them and he says, hey, stop what you're doing and follow me. And they were like, you know what? We'll do that. Right? That's the response.
Yeah. Stop what you're doing, because I'm about to ruin.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Do you think that? So confidence. So okay. So getting back to confidence, they talk about how a person who's confident can just kind of walk into a room and start telling people what to do, and they'll just do it. Like it's such an attractive thing. So women are attracted to it, men are attracted to it for different reasons sometimes.
Yes, but you're right.
Yeah, but both are attracted to it, as it pulls them towards. That's all I'm trying to say. It's an attraction. It pulls towards these things, and it's really, really interesting to see the kind of response that people have to confidence. It really, really is. Because you'll know someone's like dead wrong and maybe some kind of facts or something factual.
Yeah.
And you just let it slide. You know?
Because they said it like they meant it.
Because they said it like they meant it, right. It was like, man, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
But he meant it.
He meant it, man.
Yeah.
So let's stir the pot and really make people mad. Let's talk about Trump with this, right?
Yep. Come on. Let's make him all the way mad.
Okay. Now, again, this is not a popularity contest. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what God wants us to talk about in terms of these particular topics. So, this is not about whether or not this person is interested in hurting your feelings or preserving them. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right. Or even that he's refined or any of that. This is moving all that aside. Let's just identify what's true about him.
Yeah. So, confident.
Dripping.
Very, very, very confident.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because remember, the American people had, 16 other Republican nominees?
Yeah.
16 of them.
And I'm going to say, this is going to sound aggressive, but from my perspective, certainly back then, less so now, but certainly back then, 16 other more qualified candidates.
Absolutely.
I mean, each one of them, at the very least, had political experience.
Right.
Right. In that regard, he was cold.
Right. That's what made it such an interesting thing to see. It was the fact that he began to pull out more and more and more. And I was like, they really don't want a politician there.
Yeah.
They really, really don't. because they had lost confidence in a politician.
Yep.
Just in general.
Yeah. But I think that's because politicians are compromisers. They're not brave.
They're not courageous.
At least, right. Not courageous. Right. So not brave in the sense that sometimes they don't go first, and not courageous in the sense that they don't always lead the people well. Both.
Yeah. Especially the Republican Party.
Yeah. So
that's all they complain about. They complain about, like they get in there and talk tough, but when they get in there, everyone's the same one.
So if everybody is always the same one, if you are legislating based on polls, you are neither brave nor courageous. Right? Because both of those are the antithesis of bravery and courage. What do the people think? What's going to make the people happy? Come on.
Yeah.
Not what's right.
Which is exactly what Saul's problem was.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Exactly what his problem was. Listening to the people.
Yep.
And even Jesus calls it out saying, they want to hear things that tickle people's ears.
Yeah. So one of the first words out of Saul's mouth was, they wanted. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah. And they saw this guy that they believed, because he had all the confidence in the Dagon universe, that number one, he was going to pull it off. Number two, that he was just confident enough and looked crazy enough to where he was might actually do something different other than the status quo.
Yes.
And I think that intrigued people, the fact that this one seemed to have so much confidence and so much arrogance about him and so much just whatever about him that he might not actually do what he's supposed to do and do what he said he was actually going to do, because that will stroke his ego and that will actually, that will build up his legacy, because that's what he's really after and looking for anyway.
Yes.
He's after his legacy. So when he says something, he wants that thing to be platinum.
Yes.
It's like, I said it, I did it, I'm the best.
Yep.
That's all that he wants.
Yeah.
Best president ever.
Yes. Right, man. And in that regard, a man of his word. Right. Now,
which is not a bad thing.
No. Now, you may or may not like his word.
Yeah.
Right? Those are kind of separate things.
Or the tactics in which he uses to get there.
Or the tactics. But he said he was going to do it, and he did it. Right? So I'm going to go back a president prior. Barack Obama said, I'm going to get health care. Right? Whether you thought that was a good idea or a bad idea, it's kind of right. Put that aside. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. So I say that because if you don't like Donald Trump, it's easy to think that level of courage is bad. That level of bravery is bad. But no. You love it when it's your guy. It's a beautiful thing when it's your guy.
Right.
It only becomes a threat when it's the person who's not your guy.
Right. Because, we want that in our relationships, right?
We do. We
would love for someone to actually, I'm going to be here at this time doing this, and we congratulate them and wish them well and all kinds of things. And we give them more responsibility when someone does that.
We do. Listen, as quiet as it is kept, my wife grades me on how well I keep my word. Right. That's the scale for my marriage. It's not how much money I make. It's not how good looking I am. It's not how much time I spend in the gym. It's not how well I cook. It's not how much the kids love me. I mean, all those things help. Don't get me wrong. But where she, right, the 70% of my grade is, did he do what he said he was going to do?
Yeah. So being brave is going against popular belief and demand.
Yes.
It's so yeah, I think that, and going back into what you were saying before too about courage, that not doing that affects the people. And I think that there's this effect that's happening right now because of his presidency.
Yes.
That people are being a lot more bold and brave and saying that, this is what it is, deal with it.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because if everyone is stroking each other's ego, you can't get truth anymore.
Yeah. So I think that's why people follow Jesus. because he was that guy. So this is Matthew chapter 4. I am in verse 18. It says this, KJV, King James. I don't want to be in the King James right now. Let me move to the English
The
Standard.
King of James.
Yeah, move to
The King.
slightly more modern language.
New King James would be good too.
New King James will be good. That is one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technical
difficulties as usual.
But
Oh, here we go. I got it. Okay. 18. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he being Jesus, saw two brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. He said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Love this. Verse 20. Immediately they left their nets and followed him.
see, there's something about truth.
Yep.
That leads to confidence. That leads to bravery.
Yep. And people will follow, fight, and die for a brave guy.
Yeah.
Follow, fight, and die.
Braveheart. Yeah. Which is really extraordinary when you think about it.
It is. It is. And so, right? And it goes all kinds of directions, which is why we can mention Donald Trump. Whether you love him or hate him is completely irrelevant. You've got to acknowledge the guy is brave. I think he's a racist. That's somebody else talking, not me. Even if you think he's a racist, let it, right? So what? That doesn't mean he's not a brave racist.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have brave drug dealers, you can have brave gang leaders, or you can have brave police officers, you can have brave firemen, you can have brave doctors, you can have brave pastors, you can have brave teachers, right? You can apply that wherever you want. But the reality is this: people will follow, fight, and die for a brave person. So choose to be brave well.
Yeah. So when we think about us being brave, it's the charge that the Holy Spirit is giving us right now. I think that has to come in with the truth of the word that He's spoken over us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The assignment that we may have.
Yes.
So if you're being brave, that means that you have to believe in what it is that He has said and where you're going. You told me an interesting story about where you get your name from and why you have a certain degree of bravery.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of funny. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with the class here.
Yeah. So, little kid, single digits, right? My dad was a pastor, has been most, if not all of my life. I think, like around 2 or 3, maybe 4 years old, we moved from New York to Kentucky. So that was my dad, brave. God said go, he's going, dragging the family along with him. We're having a ball the whole way through. Talking to my mom, and I asked my mom what my name means because nobody else that I know has my name. And she says to me that it means, and I may be confusing the meaning of my name with the meaning of my brother's name, but it doesn't matter. When she said this, I took a hold of it and never let it go. She said, your name means greatest among all nations. And right, maybe it was because of my personality. Maybe it's because I was a young boy talking to his mother, and there is a special link between young men and their mothers. Maybe it was because the Spirit of God jumped on me and caused me to leap in my spirit. But when she said that, I grabbed that and got a hold of that, and a level of bravery came over me that has really never let me go. So I would go into dangerous situations and dangerous areas, and what I would tell myself is that my mission of being great has not yet been fulfilled. So God won't let me die. So we're good.
Yeah. And that's the thing that happened with Jesus, though.
Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
he's like, do this and I'll make you fishers of men. He's like, because he knew beforehand, he knew exactly what he was talking about, so therefore he could say it with such truth, such confidence, because, you know, he's God, he's the Word, he knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
You know, he has the whole thing, you know, kind of written out and set up and everything, you know.
Yep.
So he's like, this. And can you imagine the way he may have said it and looked when he did it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, could you even imagine? Like, when you for real know, and that's kind of the crazy thing about it too, is like, because again, we're charismatic.
Yep.
Right? So, we'll get a word from God and then wrestle with it to see whether or not it's true or not. He was the Word, and it's kind of like, this is what it is. Period. Nothing's going to happen until these things happen.
And there is no evidence except for maybe one instance in the New Testament when you're in the Gospels. Now, when you get to the book of Revelation, that's kind of a different conversation. But when you're in the Gospels, there is no evidence that Jesus was rough or angry, right? All the descriptions of him are loving and kind. So he wasn't even forceful with the disciples. He just said it with such a level of, right, conviction.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, right, he wasn't an announcer at a wrestling match.
Right.
Follow me, because I'm going to make you fishers of men.
Brother.
Right? He didn't. It was none of that.
Cream of the crop, oh yeah.
He spoke in a more controlled voice, but I had a greater amount of belief. And that's what they followed.
So then, that's the thing about it. See, in bringing the light of this, why prophesy and not speak? And now, why hear a word and not have the same level of confidence? If we're called to be Christ-like, if the reason that term was given to us, because from the citizens' perspective, the early Christians reminded them of that Jesus guy that they had heard about.
Yes.
Right? Because it was just called the Way. There was no name for it.
That's correct.
You know?
That's correct.
The citizens, based on their observation, those are the ones who said, hey, they remind me of this.
Yes.
So there is a calling to be in his image, right?
Yes.
Or to mimic Christ, you know?
Yes.
So to be discipled by the Holy Spirit. So I wonder what in the world is going on when we receive a prophetic word and we don't have the same level of confidence, which leads to the bravery in terms of what's going to happen. Because I get words and everything, and you get words and everything, and then we're still trying to, like, you know, scratch our head saying, you know, well, I wonder. We look at the circumstances, you know, it's like, oh, I wonder. Because Jesus didn't do that. Jesus was in so many different situations where he should have died. And the fact that, you know, when he tried to run off the cliff, he walks through them.
Yeah.
He walks through them, bruh.
Yeah. Right. So staying in the scripture, I think the response is because we are little in our own eyes. Right.
Which goes back to what we're talking self-image.
Right. It's self-image. This goes back to what, not Samuel. I keep wanting to say Samuel, but it's King Saul in 1 Samuel. Right. What God was saying about you. Because you were little in your own eyes, when I gave you a word, you didn't listen. Right. Now, that littleness may come from a few places. It may come from maybe your relationship with your parents, your father. Right. Your father made you feel some kind of way, and so you have trouble seeing yourself as big, as adult, as mature, as ready, as capable.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever their excuse may be, the bottom line is because you were little in your own eyes, you rejected the word of God because you thought it was too big for you.
Yeah. That's a lot, dude, because I'm trying to let it go, but that's the thing about it. It's like when you can't see yourself properly, how much damage that actually does.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's really, really foul what happens when that's what actually is going on, when you can't for real see yourself. Having eyes to see, not seeing. Having ears to hear, not hearing. You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, It is everything. I'm going to take a tangent here. It is so much of everything that I wonder if that is why so much of what we see in the media is so corrupt. Because it is about controlling our vision. Right? So all the heroes are super. Let me say it that way. All the heroes are super. They're not ordinary. And so I can go and enjoy a good action movie, but not be called to be a hero myself because I'm not super. And all the heroes are super, and I'm just ordinary.
Even with Batman, you know, it's like, well, his superpower is he's rich.
Right. And smart.
He's just, I think they say he's the second smartest person in DC universe. In the DC universe,
he's rich. He's smart. He's got a fantastic R&D team, and he's been trained in the martial arts.
Almost all of them.
Right. And I'm just an analyst. Right? How do you compete with that?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, without picking on Batman too much, although I do think you should probably stop watching television. But without picking on Batman too much, I think that that's why the enemy does with media what he does, because it is about controlling your eyes, making what you see acceptable to you, and let that minister to you. Let that create a vision for you.
Yeah.
Right? I remember people say that there is no relationship between violent movies and violence. And I see where they're coming from. And so I think the responsibility is always on the criminal and not on the movie producer.
Yes.
Okay? So I'm going to put that there. But I know from experience that there are certain movies that I can't watch because they do too much to me.
True. And they're designed that way.
They are designed that
way. I'm a media person. So when I'm making media, I will put a image or a scene or whatever it is to affect you on purpose.
Right.
You know? Now, to what end is one thing.
Right.
But I do that on purpose.
Yes.
To affect you. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yes. Yes. Right. So I'm on, right, your eyes. Seeing how you see yourself can be a function of what you've been looking at, what you've been comparing yourself to. And I think that's the dirty little secret. That keeps you small in your own eyes.
And I think that if so it's really what it is. It's seeing someone else's vision. It's seeing man's vision so much that God can't show you his vision.
Yes, because his vision either is impossible to see or ridiculous when you see it.
Okay, that's going to put us into the next category then, so we can move on now. That's going to be being objective.
Alas, and did my Savior bleed?
All right. Okay, so now we have. I'm sorry to keep on starting out the same way. I always say, okay, so I annoy myself right now. What is that? What is that, bruh?
It's you being little in your own eyes. You're good.
Anyway. Okay. Being objective.
Yep.
Being objective, I think, weaves in exactly what we're talking about so well, right?
Yes.
Because you can't be brave or courageous if you can't see objectively.
Yes. Yeah, I would absolutely say that. Yes.
Because you can be brave. Well, I think there's being brave in your own eyes, right?
Yes.
So you can be like, something that Jordan Peterson talks about. He talks about how people associate, for example, they project themselves in terms, like if they were watching a movie on Nazi Germany, people typically put themselves in the position of either the Jews or the freedom fighters. But he said they never put themselves in the position of being the Nazi forces.
Yes.
And he's saying that
Yep.
that's where the mistake is actually made.
Yes.
Because people assume that, oh, I'd be an allied fighter, I'd be helping them out and everything. Is like, probably actually not.
Yeah.
That's what his argument is. Probably actually not. The reason why is that it's the same reason why you're stuck where you are right now. You're too busy people pleasing and rationalizing that in order to be brave to actually do something. So you can say that I'm brave without actually showing the work.
Yeah. So that Jordan Peterson. Let me start with that. Right. What a word.
Who says things like that? It's great.
But I've gotta. He's so true. So I'm a pastor, teacher. Right. One of the things that I love to do in my teaching is make the story relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And the story's not relevant as long as you see it as what those people over there did.
Right.
So when I'm on my square, when I'm really teaching well, I will read a story and allow you to identify yourself with however you identify yourself. But then as I'm developing the text, I'm bringing the villain, right? Using my quotation fingers here. I'm bringing the villain closer and closer to where you are. Because it's easy to believe that people just do these things that don't please God because they are bad or crazy. Something's just wrong with them. They are just in some way completely deformed and so spiritually deficient and so riddled with evil, right? That's easy. Deplorable. Until you start bringing the story home. Here's who these people were. Here's what they believed. Here were their strengths. Here were their weaknesses. Right? When I'm done, the villain is you.
Yeah.
And they just made one or two wrong moves that took them off the cliff.
Yep.
Right. But you aren't too much further than one or two wrong moves off the cliff as well.
Right.
But for the grace of God.
Right. Because I think it's so interesting how everyone gets on the Pharisees.
Yes.
I think it's hilarious to me. I think that people really assume, it's like, I can't believe they would do that. It's like, if you are just sitting there telling other people what to do,
yep,
because God said this, and this in the Word, how does that make you any different?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yes.
Like that, because and a lot of people think that that's all that Christianity is. Repent, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's like, that's not the job.
Right. So being right, I'm gonna pick on a phrase that I never use. So being woke is not being able to see the speck in everybody else's eye.
Yeah.
Right. Being woke is being able to see and remove the beam in your eye.
Yes.
That's woke.
Yeah. And I think what was even so interesting now is actually there's a guy who's on from Brand Nubian, Lord Jamar from Brand Nubian. He's on Vlad TV a whole lot, and people like him because he's brave.
Yep.
He's brave, and he just says whatever he wants to say on there, and people love him for that. To the point where he is on every single week.
Wow.
And he's been on every single week for 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Because of that one quality. He says whatever he wants. He says things like, Eminem is a guest in the house of hip hop. because he's white.
Shamo. I wouldn't have said that.
Well, I mean, like I said, the argument is, well, who started hip hop? Was it black people, or was it a community of people in Brooklyn that consisted of black people, some white people, and some Puerto Ricans also? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But anyway,
yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not. Again, that's another podcast.
Right.
I'm not saying that he's right or wrong. I would not have thought of it like that. I would have been like Eminem, wealthy, multi-platinum artist.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He don't care, right? He's on something else.
Yeah, he's on something else. He's also a 5% too, so that also explains a lot of things too. Anyway, so, but he said, he talked about how today's society is actually revenge of the nerds.
Yes. Wow, but yes.
I thought about that. I was like, oh, because I've known that, but it's the way he put it so concisely in that. I was like,
yes.
That's perfect.
Yes.
It is revenge of the nerds.
Yep.
Me being one, I should know.
Yeah.
So, it is because the kind of aggressiveness and bullying that you saw face to face, you see it completely manifested online now. Except now I don't have to have the physique or the physical attributes to back it up. I can just go ahead and destroy you online. I can ask for your job because you said this online. It's bullying.
Yeah.
You know, the nerds have now become the bullies in a lot of ways. In most ways. You know? But that goes back into getting the beam out of your eye. You're employing the exact same tactics that you were taught from the bullies, and now you're employing them. So how, again, does that make you any different? Yeah. Because if you are using a position of power, rather physically or even digitally, then how are you not a bully?
Yeah. So, right, I'm going to...
Shamar has many things to say about bullying. This is now coming back to me, so I think I triggered Shamar.
Well, so I think about how you can respond as a bully. The only way to do that is to make somebody else a villain, right? To make somebody else something other than. And so if you can dehumanize them is the word I'm going to use, right? If you can make them not human, something abnormal, then you can justify you becoming the bully. Yeah. Right? But as long as they're human, then especially if you've been bullied, especially if you've been in those situations, it becomes almost impossible to respond by bullying back, right? The only proper response is compassion or making this a teachable moment, right? So you've got to do something to them in order to then do something to them.
Yeah. And real quick too, guys, one of the pastors of the hour came in just now. As I said, we might have a special guest coming in, and that is now Pastor Davenport. Let's give him a round of applause. Say what's up to the good people.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Got that Pastor Reverend voice.
Nice, come
on. But yes, in terms of being objective, that's what topic that we're on right now. We're talking about being objective, having a true north.
Yes.
So now things are so, I don't know, everyone just believes what they're doing is right. So that's what we're talking about being a bully. Yeah. Is that when you believe that you're right, or when you want to attain power like that, then you go ahead and bully and run over everyone else. Yeah. That gets in your way. So when we're talking about being objective here, we're talking about what is the true north. And how do we actually embody being objective? How do we actually make sure that we are pointing towards true north? Because we see what happens in society when there's no true north. So to people who are starving, who are robbers, who are, doing all kinds of illegal activities, all that kind of stuff, they look at it as them being objectively right because they shouldn't have done that to me. But it goes back into what we were talking about before,
Yes.
which is going by man's law versus what God's law actually is. What he actually likes.
That's correct.
So there seems to be a direct correlation between you doing what people want you to do and how they want you to feel, and you not caring about how people feel about you, but you know that you're right with God.
Yes. Yeah.
So did you want to weigh in real quick? You can go ahead and weigh in real quick there, Pastor Davenport.
Hearing you talk about God's law versus the humanistic of man's law, I think that we have to all focus in on the situations that what is God's law versus men's law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we as humans, we fall short because we want to take the short way out. Should I say we want to microwave life, escape the doubt that I can do this on my own. I don't need the help of someone else because we're human nature, and most of us are taught, by our parents to take care of yourself, do things on your own, don't try to ask the next man for something. So we try to go throughout life not being a help axer, not asking people for help, when in long terms, that could pose a great threat, just period,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what people struggle with, it's not become more of a spiritual sense, because I believe that most people in this world today has some spiritual principle about themselves, whether you study Hindu, whether you study Christianity, whether you study Muslim background, the Islamic religion. So you have that form of whatever you are taught. So you have a formality of it, but you try not to really grasp hold of that. I think that's the real issue of what people struggle with on a day-to-day, is that, am I doing the right things as to opposed to what I'm being taught?
So you're saying that it's a law of God written on man's heart.
Yep.
Right. So there's that thing where I know I shouldn't have done this, so I'm going to go ahead and work as hard as I possibly can and provide as much evidence as I possibly can to shut that voice up.
Yeah.
Though it never goes away. And so I think that then anyone who agrees with that voice becomes a megaphone for them when you're just saying, hey, you might not want to do that.
Yeah.
Or, hey, this is sin. You might want to do that.
Yeah.
Then it becomes even more pronounced because it's already raging inside anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the one area that is really tender in. So when you get beat up and everything, when you have a black guy, you just barely touch your cheek. Ow! Stop that. Yeah. So I think that when people react to the truth, and Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he embodies that. That means that if there's an objective truth, that means that when you bring it up to people, that truth is ringing loud and making people, and has made people sore that they've been dealing with for a long time. So as soon as you open your mouth, ouch.
Yeah. So, right, I think that something you said, Pastor Davenport, that I think is absolutely true, is doing what you're doing as opposed to what you've been taught. And I think it comes back to true north, right?
That's a good word.
I have a new coworker. Her first question when she came into the office was, what is the source of truth? Right? What are we going to say, right? When somebody asks us for data, I'm an analyst, right, professionally. When someone asks me for data, if I have two conflicting sources, which one am I going to say is the primary source of truth? Right? And I think that there is the truth that they know is loud in their ear, but then there's what they want to do, and they haven't settled on which one is going to be the source of truth. Right? Because once you settle on that, then it makes reconciling with that easier. But as long as there's a fight, as long as there is, right, you can hear my watch, I'm banging my fist together. As long as there is still a fight about which one of these we're going to call a source of truth, even though you have these loud voices of teaching ringing in your ear, as long as you haven't said out loud, as long as you haven't resolved that as a Christian, the Bible is going to be the source of truth, right? Then the fight goes on. And that's what it is. The fight goes on.
Yeah. And it is a fight.
It is.
Picking back on what you just said there, you said some deep stuff there. I think that we wrestle with the carnal mind and then the spirit. Yep. For the Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against things in high places. Mm-hmm. So it comes a point in time like the 12, for example. They all came from different ethnic backgrounds. They all walked different pathways before they met Christ. Mm-hmm. And we're going to use Judas for an example. Yep. The traitor. The night that Jesus was taken into captivity, he gave him up. Did he mean to do that intentionally? Here's a guy that, walked with him 30 plus years prior to his execution, was taught by him, was taught principles, was taught how to be a fisherman of men, and then he goes off and he betrays him. So, picking back off of what you said, I think that most people have to get past the doubt in their mind that you're not just wrestling with your mind. At some point, there's a gray area there. It's very shallow. I think most people think that it's all about me. It has to be about me, and if it's not my way, then it's the highway. So you have to live a life according to carrying out the principles of the past, but remembering what you're taught, but not taking that into fruition, should I say, because notice is what Jesus said prior to him being taken into captivity. He told Jesus, do whatever you got to do, be about it quickly, and then that's when Judas realized, I just done something in my mind. See, sitting at the table with Jesus, he didn't realize that, when he took that money from the tax collectors and from the high palace, he didn't realize what he was doing. It took for Jesus to die or to go to the cross for him to realize, for guilt to set in, to say, hey, I've done something wrong here. A lot of people, and that's how people live day to day. They wake up, they have breath in their body, they go to work, they play, they come back home to their families, and everything is supposed to be okay. They take life for granted in a sense, and in terms, we shouldn't. We should live every single day knowing that, hey, this is Christ. Christ put breath in our body. Christ allowed us to wake up. Christ allowed me to come back home to my family. And if it was not for him, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be back home with my families. I wouldn't be able to go to a job or be able to breathe this thing called oxygen into my body. So I think it's time that we focus on not just taking little things for granted, because you could be here today and gone tomorrow.
I think there's something very important that you were talking about too. I think this sums up a lot of what goes on here is selfishness versus thinking outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Selflessness, right? So the implications of when you don't have a true north, it is all about you. It's about you protecting your stuff, your ego. I don't want to deal with that, right? So therefore, I'm not really that kind of person. Well, wait a minute. God called you out to do this. So how can you tell him that you're not kind of person? That's the same argument that Moses was having with God.
Right.
So someone's wrong here. So, but really it's just an avoidance to make sure, because again, your brain wants to make sure that you avoid trauma. It's designed that way. So, you burn your hand, you don't do that anymore. It's like, okay, got it. Or you go through a painful breakup, okay, got it. No more of that. You know, it's constantly trying to find ways to avoid trauma. So when a person becomes inside their head all the time, they can never see an objective truth because they're trying to avoid trauma. I saw this, I think it was called, what was it called? It was some kind of meeting that they had where they were talking about, you know, taking down capitalism and replacing it with socialism or whatever, right? And some of the people that got up there were saying things like, comrade, they called each other comrades. Like,
yes.
So, comrade, can people please quiet down over here because that's triggering my anxiety right now because too many things going on and it's making me unfocused and everything. And so I would really appreciate, you know, you not doing that. So this other person was trans person, and they raised their hands like, could you not use the guy pronoun?
Yeah.
You know, and can you not use the guy pronoun? This is an actual thing. This is not it was an actual thing.
Yeah, the guy said, point of privilege, he, him, you know, please stop, whispering among yourselves. And then the other guy got mad because he used the he, him pronoun, right?
Right.
Messed him up.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but all that was for one thing only. Ego.
Yeah.
To make sure that wall stays up. You know? Make sure my wall stays up. And it's your responsibility to make sure it stays up.
That's right. Not mine.
Not theirs.
Even though it's my wall.
Right.
But putting that aside.
Right. So then it becomes about, now I'm not even responsible for my own wall, my own ego. Yeah. Now you're responsible for my ego. For my self-defense mechanisms. And that's, how do you even deal with that? How can someone even be responsible for someone else's ego? So when you have that much ego, there's almost like different levels of it now. So there's like, you know, your ego as in, you know, your self-defense mechanisms that gets you around problems rather than going through problems. Because because God's always been saying, go through that. Go through the River Jordan. Go through this. Go through that. You go through it. Be a good courage. Go forward. He's always been saying that. Mm-hmm. Right? Always. Never said stop here, you know, you don't have to do it because it's too hard. He never said that.
Sure didn't.
Yeah. Jesus was not saying, you know, hey, well, if permission of the state allows it, go and make disciples. Never said that. And he knew what had just happened to him.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, have fun. I'll see you when you get up here.
Yeah.
Right? So when you don't have true north, it has to be all about you. Because then you're not seeing what not being brave costs people. What not being courageous costs people. And I think a lot of times, with the way the culture is being shaped right here, would it be as misshaping as the culture is if the church was being more courageous and being more brave?
You know, that's a great topic. And on my way over here, I had to pray about it, and I think now that it's time for me to talk about it a little bit. When you talk about the church and being courageous, I think that first and foremost, when we have taken God out of the center and not made him the focal point, I think
that's true north. That's objective, right?
Because people have their own opinions about different religions, or, you know, we try to respect this person's religion, or we try to, but Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light.
That's right.
And no man can get to Christ but through me. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think when we start settling for other people's opinions, I'll use that as the cliche. When we start settling for other people's opinions because based on how they feel, instead of standing up and saying, hey, this is who I serve, this is what I represent, you know, and still having a respect for what they believe in, but saying, I'm not going to veer from that. You know, I'm not going to change from that based off of what I believe in. You know, it becomes hard because, to be honest, if based off of some of the things that I'm going through right now, if I did not have Christ in my life, if I did not have him as the center, you know, and did not know where my true north was,
Yes.
then I will be a ship without a sail.
Yep.
You know, I'll be shipwrecked because the blind can't lead the blind. It's biblical principle.
Yep.
He said, "How can two walk together unless they agree?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I try to tend to, when someone's not in my true north, or when someone's not in the center of what I believe in, yes, I still am friends with you, because like the word says, you know, how can you love Christ if you don't love your neighbor, you know, and you've never seen Christ, you know? So I still have to love you. I still have to treat you as a brethren, but we just don't agree. And the Bible says that I have to shake the dust from my feet. If I'm not received, shake the dust from your feet and continue to live my path. You know, I'm not going to agree with everybody. I'm not going to have a true relationship with everyone. You know, you're still my brother, and at the end of the day, but we just don't agree, you know, and that's okay. You know, I think that in order to have a true north, you still have to know how to get along with the next person in their true north, in their whatever they are, you know, because everybody is not the same, you know. Even though we bleed the same blood, you have different races, you have different colors, you have different creeds, and I think the real issue, the deep-rooted issue, is finding people that are like you, move like you, talk like you, work like you, you know, to be centered around. You know, it's just like you said, y'all were piggying back on that group of people, you know, that one guy got mad because, you know, he used he, him, or the other guy got upset because he raised his hand, you know. They weren't centered. You know, you have to be able to still be in that group of people and know a person's comfort zone, what's going to push a person to an edge, what's going to, you know, this person may not like this person may not like that. So now the true focal point is, how do I operate around people that are not like me? You know?
Yeah. I think that can take us into the next portion there too. So the next portion is going to be, I think, segues right into that well. Unless anyone had anything else to say, I don't want to cut anything else in front of what the Spirit's doing. But being bold. So we're going to talk about next being bold. Okay. Being bold. So in our previous discussion, we were talking about basically relationships and our environment and how are we going to function within the proper environment in terms of just the relationships that are going on in our lives, and making sure that we have going towards true north, an objective true north, being objective, you know, and having brothers and sisters to help us out in terms of being objective. Now, I think that requires being bold, right?
Yes.
So what's the difference between? So, Martin, I'm gonna ask you this question: what do you think the difference is between being courageous, being brave, and being bold?
Well, so let's swing.
They're so similar.
Yeah, they're really close, but let's swing back to the beginning. So we talked about, I think, being courageous first, and we called being courageous being a good leader, right? Responding to the high call. That's situational. Being bold is personality. So, not bold. Being brave is personality. So that is somebody who has made a decision to live their life in a certain way. That's the guy who always is jumping in first, right? Runs out first, jumps into the fire first, jumps into the pool first, right? That's that person.
Yeah. State of being.
Who's bold, right? I think now, looking at being brave is something a little bit different here. It is, when I think of being brave, I think of...
Well, being bold or being brave?
Being bold.
Okay.
When I think of being bold, I think of Joshua, and I think that being bold is fighting fear. Right now, I reserve the right to change my mind, but I think that being bold is fighting fear. So you said something last podcast that I now want to respond to, right? I've had enough time to process through it, and so I want to give a good response. You said that God calls us to the high call of being courageous and of being brave. And he kind of gives you no way around. And I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
There is one singular exception in the Bible, though, that I could find. Right?
Okay.
One exception. So we are in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 17. So this is the children of Israel. They are just about to leave Egypt, right? They've left, but they're not completely free yet. So, in other words, if I'm looking at this correctly, Pharaoh has not been dealt with. Yeah, so this is just before the Red Sea. And so this is God talking military strategy with Moses. Okay, right, just before liberation. This is a conversation between God and Moses. Listen to what God says. Verse 17, Exodus chapter 13. I'm in the New King James today. Then it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest perhaps the people change their mind when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up in orderly ranks out of the land of Egypt. Right?
Orderly ranks. Yeah.
Orderly ranks. Now, being bold is fighting fear. Right? It's where God doesn't have to take you the long way. He can take you the short way, which is right through the enemy's ranks.
Wow.
Right? So, I'm going to see if I can do this again. Courageous is good leadership. Bravery is a jump in first personality. Boldness is fighting the fear, even though you feel it, not letting it rule and reign. Right? It differs from, I want to make sure I'm using these words right. It differs from bravery in that a brave person doesn't necessarily feel the fear. Right? So the brave guy, you hear gunshots, you run towards the gunshots because you're the guy who always is never afraid to run into danger. Right? Beautiful. The question becomes, what does that person do when they feel fear? Right? Because remember, we talked about how bravery can be situational. Right? You can be brave talking to women, but scared in war.
Yeah.
Right? You can be brave in taking risks in business, but scared to pray for somebody. Right? And so bravery can be situational. So what happens when your situation is not comfortable for bravery? Then boldness jumps in. Right? And boldness calls you to fight the fear. That's bold.
Yeah. Yeah, to that.
That is deep thought. That is very deep thought. It's got me pondering.
If you have time to ponder,
it's got me pondering. Because you people are so many times faced in oppositions to where, like you said, bravery is I'm going to take that bullet. I'm going to, I'm jumping in first. But then boldness, because they run so coherent together, is I'm going to sit back. I'm going to see which angle the opposition is coming from before I go in, before I fight, And so, wow, man, that, even to know that, in certain situations, God had strategies already perpetuated for the people, not just the people of Israel, and so many times he says that today. He says, I have avenues of escape for you, but you have to find out which road you're going to take. Either you're going to be courageous about it, either you're going to have the bold look and jump feet first, or you're going to sit back and let me speak to you for a moment and then find the angle of attack. And that can be hard in so many ways.
Yeah, brother.
That could be hard in so many ways because, he's giving you 3 avenues, in 3 different pathways on how to face your enemies, or how to fight the giant, or just in every simple day of life, how to structure your home, your business, your money, and you have to choose which pathway you're going to take. That could be a hard opposition.
Yeah. So being bold. Okay, so giving from your example, Jar.
Yeah.
Because remember, the Lord's talking about us being, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a thing where, again, there's the assumption that, I'm not like those people. You know what I'm saying? So, because if this conversation gets to a point where we're not talking about what we are being, and the listener or what it is to be, this is not an abstract thing. This is about first person stuff.
Yes, it is.
Those listening, us talking about this, being bold,
Yep.
encompassing boldness, right? Like a human being, a bold being.
Yes.
Okay? So, when I'm hearing about, being bold in terms of fighting the fear, and what Pastor Davenport's talking about too, in terms of strategies, I'm thinking that to be bold, really being that is, I think that with all of these things, in order for them to function properly as a string, there has to be the acknowledgement of the objective, of being objective, and being objective when God gives you a word, all these things can flow once He gives you a word. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
because true north.
Right, because true north, right?
Right.
So, as believers, what we can't afford to do, and that's the thing about it, we can't afford to do this. We cannot afford to be beings of doubt. We have to be these beings who are actually for real flowing in this and have an understanding of true north, because if we're doubting all the time, then we can't be courageous.
That's right.
You can't be bold. You can't be brave. You can't do any of those things.
Yeah.
There has to be that, and we have to be anchored in that. So, go back to your story when you said, when you were young, that your mom told you what your name meant. Your name meant great among nations. After that, you're just like, fight me.
Right.
It's like, until I am great among the nations.
Yep, there's nothing you can do to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with Jesus. It is not yet my time.
Come on. Right.
Right? It's not yet my time. So, it doesn't matter what you try to show. They picked up stones to kill him, and he walked through the crowd.
Yep.
Like, what? Or, he disappeared into the crowd. Like, on some Jedi mind tricks, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't time yet. None of these things were time yet.
Yeah.
So, when I'm looking at being these things, I have to believe with such conviction in the same way that Jesus did, because he knew the truth, right? Yeah. And he wasn't doubting. He wasn't talking about, well, maybe my father's wrong or whatever. He wasn't talking about none of that.
Nope.
As soon as it came out of his mouth, people were drawn to him because they knew about that he was already bold enough to say that, hey, I say this on behalf of my own authority. Which you don't do, back then. You had to go by this rabbi's authority or that rabbi's authority. By the authority of Rabbi Gamaliel, I say this. He said by his own authority. Then he was brave enough to go ahead and know the truth for himself. So therefore, he's like, fight me. And then he had the courage to go ahead and flip tables over and confront people all day long and call the Pharisees, who were the people that everyone else looked up to, man looked up to, and called them whitewashed tombs full of dead man's bones. Who does this except for one who actually believes? But the problem is that if we're called to be disciples of Christ,
right,
should that be the same effect?
Yes.
Listening to what you just said there, it goes hand in hand, because notice something. At a very young age, when Jesus came on the scene, he already knew what he was prepared for. He already knew that he was going to one day have to die. And it's something when you are knowing that you have to go fight a battle that you can't win. Just like when his parents came into the temple when he was 12, I believe it was. and told him, and he not in a disrespectful manner, he told his mom, I got to be about my father's business.
Right. I got you. Go to.
You know, his mom not understanding that at a time. You get what I'm saying? What he's talking about, what is he talking about? I got to be about my father's business. He knew the true objective at hand. You know, he knew that, listen, Mom, I can't let you come in between the center of what I got going on right now, you know. And a lot of times we as people, we do that. We steer off, you know, based off of what we were talking about prior to this session. We steer off from that.
Yeah.
We veer away from that because we try to fit in with the crowd because the crowd is doing this, you know, instead of keeping the main focus saying, hey, I've accepted something in my life. I've accepted a calling or whatever it may be, you know, being a pastor or teacher or whatever. I've accepted this in my life, and I'm not going, hey, listen, you may take this road, but I have a mission to get to.
Right.
Yep.
I have a center true north. You know, I can't let you let me get that off, because the moment I let you get me off focus, then I not only lost, now I got to deal with, you know, the double standardness of life. I got to deal with people thinking me this way. Hey, weren't you this way? Weren't you professing to be this? Weren't you professing to be that? Not truly knowing, you know, that, you know, sometimes you got to go through things in life. And I think that that's where people misjudge a lot of things, not only dealing with the church, they misjudge a lot of things dealing with life, because they see a person one way, and then when a person has a downfall, or when a person is going through something, or when a person has an issue, they look at them totally different. They have a different outlook on them. Instead of saying, hey, it's not my business. My job is to say, pray for this person, or what do I need to do as a person to uplift this person back up to where they need to be?
Yeah. What do you guys think about this? I'm the provocateur here. What do you guys think about the boldness to be vulnerable? And this is what I mean by that. Sometimes I believe that, based on man's opinion, we keep on coming back to man's opinion. Seems to be a little bit of a theme here, right? To where a good way to be off of your objective is to think about what other people are thinking about and to do what other people are doing. Seems to be a very, very good way to do it.
That's the truth.
So, but I think that as what you touched on this a little bit, that when you are a pastor or an elder or doing something in the church or whatever it is, right? You're almost not allowed to be, the pressure to be perfect is on.
It is.
Right?
It is.
This is the pressure to be perfect. And I wonder, is there boldness, enough boldness and bravery to say that, you know, I'm not Jesus. But at the same time, too, that could be a get out of jail free card, you know, to go ahead and just do whatever you want to as well.
No, I don't think that, and that's where a lot of people get it wrong, for a sense. I don't think that it's a get out of jail free card. I don't think that it's an excuse to, I think that you just know your truth. You know who you are, you know, and I'd rather be the person that's not fake and phony and living behind a facade of something. If I'm going through something, I have an issue, and I need my brothers in Christ to help me through that issue, not being judgmental. You get what I'm saying? That's why, that was the real reason when Jesus wrote down in the dirt and he looked at the Pharisees. You know, these are people that are supposed to be sin free, and he said, who among you, you know, if there's anyone among us, you know, cast a stone against this woman. If you're sin free, cast a stone. And none of them could cast a stone because they knew that they had issues too. You know, I think that a lot of times we get caught up in the limelight as once we'll just take it from here. And I don't want to use it as a cliche, but once you've accepted something in your life, whether it be Christ or whoever you've accepted to be your higher power or who you believe in, because we're talking to everyone here. So I'll just leave it at that. Whoever you've accepted in your life, we'll say that. And once you've accepted them in your life, you get to the point or place once you've sat in it for so long that I've done nothing wrong. We're just going to be honest. I'm an angel. We get to that point in place. Forgetting where you once were.
Come on.
Or where you once came from.
Yep.
So you now became this translucent to where you can't even touch me type thing. Mm-hmm. I'm right there with God. I'm right there with whoever my higher power is. And forgetting who you once were. Forgetting I was this person that smoked. I was this person that drank. I was this person that cussed. I was this and then once a new person comes into the fold, or a new person comes along, oh, you can't be in my crowd, or you can't be in my true north, because you're not me. You still smoke a little bit, or you still cuss a little bit. Instead of saying, hey, I once had those issues. Let me meet you where you are, mm-hmm. so that you can get where I am. That's where the true relationship comes in. And finding a true north to me. Because I was once there. And still dealing with some of those issues today, still having to fight some of those issues today. I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I think most people, when they've accepted a relationship with something, they immediately become perfect. They immediately become put on the white robe and I'm cleansed type person mentality.
Right. Go ahead, Shamar. You really want to say something about that?
No, listen, I was just listening, but the thing that I thought you said that was so powerful was that when you have accepted something, you instantly become perfect. I hadn't heard it like that before. I think that's true. I think, though, that there is real strength and vulnerability, because one of the other things we've been talking about is being objective. Mm-hmm. And so being vulnerable opens the door for an objective analysis of who you are, where you've come from, and where you need to grow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's healthy. And then, right, boldness is leaning into the area where you need to grow, where there may be some fear, because it's uncomfortable, it's outside of your comfort zone. You've been doing one thing for so long and you're used to that, and now you're having to do something that you're not used to, and maybe don't even really want to, but you know that you need to. Right? That's where boldness really comes into play, where you are bold with being uncomfortable and doing what is hard but good.
Yeah. And I think that's such a nuanced thing.
Yes.
Doing what's hard versus what's good, or doing what's good instead of what's right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I can, for example, do good by, I like to use provocative things that make people disagree. Credit cards, for example, right? Mm-hmm. The word says the borrower is slave to the lender. Mm-hmm. Slave to the lender. That means that you got someone in your pocket at all times.
Yeah.
But I can be good at making sure that I pay it off, or that I have a good credit score, etc., right? Mm-hmm. But what is right is that don't be slave to a lender. That's what is right. So are we going to believe for the money up front, or are we going to believe in the world system? You see what I'm saying? Like it's a very, very nuanced thing, but I think that going back into that requires a lot of boldness. It requires a ton of boldness to walk into the position to where you can say that I'm going to buy this. It's like, with what money? I don't know, but God told me to go ahead and buy it, so I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it outside of His word either. This is what it is. Fight me. So that requires, again, all the boldness and the bravery and the courage to actually go ahead and do something like that. But that's only, again, if you know that true north. So weaving all these things in here, it's been really, really interesting. But I think that the Achilles heel for all this is going to be looking at what people think about you and how you think that people look at you. That's the big one right there. That's what real self-image is. How you think other people think about you. Because that's the accusation, the feedback that goes into your head that you're floating around in there all the time. Well, I think this person is not going to want to deal with me, so I'm not going to call them.
Yeah, but I agree with all that. I have found, though, that the cure for, and I was going to say a poor self-image, but I don't want to say that. I want to say the cure for an inappropriate self-image, a wrong self-image, is a good, healthy friend who can just tell you the truth.
Exactly. I'd rather have that.
Yeah. Which is, again,
right.
Have someone know what true north actually
having
is.
Somebody knows what. So two things: having somebody who knows what true north actually is, and then you being vulnerable enough to let them speak into your life.
Yeah.
Right, which requires you to expose yourself. Man, that's risky.
Yeah.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Good.
But risky.
Because
I don't know what this other person's opinion, and see, a lot of times that's what we deal with in modern day life today. You know, you have a lot of people, like I stated earlier, that live, I don't want to say a double life, but they live behind the rose-colored glasses of, I have to keep this up.
Yeah.
I have to keep this up. But the question is for how long do you have to keep this up? Mm-hmm. You know, I have to keep this up. Just like my grandfather used to say, living like the Joneses. You know, this person had this, and that. And so I want this, and that too. And so I'm going to work double time just to keep up with that. You get what I'm saying? Keep up with them or keep up with them. Instead of saying, hey, listen, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. You know, but having a friend or having someone that's not going to judge you based off of who you are. They're going to love you right where you are and say, hey, this can change. You know, we're going to bring you up to where we are. You know, and it's hard finding friends like that, especially nowadays. You know, it's hard finding people that are genuine enough to say, I'm not going to spread what we discuss or what we talk about in the streets. This stays between us, and I'm going to love you through this. It's hard. So I think that's where the big trust factor come in, because 9 times out of 10, you have many of people that want to change, that want to turn, but because they face the opposition of how do I turn without being judged? Yeah. How do I give my all? How do I be all in without someone judging my past? Yeah. And because they can't get that, because they walk into let's take Jesus for example. Jesus walked into the synagogue and seen people selling on the Sabbath, and so he started turning over tables, which was totally against the law and the will of God. You know, in a sense, let me break it down. It wasn't against the fact that Jesus was turning over the table. Jesus got angry and said, "Listen, you're not supposed to be doing this on the Sabbath." So not to confuse anybody, I didn't want to confuse anyone. Then you have people that are in the world and of the world that they're yearning to accept Christ. But it's, how do I walk into church? And I'm going to use this for a cliche and a prime example. There was one time that I've experienced this lively, where this young lady walked into church, and this was all she had, all the clothes she had. She was dressed in modest apparel, and when she came in, immediately the church judged her. Didn't know this woman, didn't know, her lifestyle, and this was someone that was truly wanting to turn, and that pushed her further back into the world. I bet. Instead of the church accepting her for what she had, and said, one of the mothers coming up to her and saying, "Hey, after church, let me go buy you something. This is not what we are. You want to join. I know you don't have much clothing. This is not." Immediately they judged her character and who she was, and she was not that way. You get what I'm saying? Right. This was just someone that did not have clothes, or did not have the means to purchase clothes to look like or look the part how the other mothers and sisters were looking in the church. And a lot of times churches do that nowadays. Not realizing it. I don't know if they're not realizing it or not realizing, hey, this is another soul, but then you're pushing that person right back into the place of their comfortability. So they will never get out of it, because now they're looking at it as, I had a point in place to where I can trust someone, truly trust someone, and they just blew it. They just blew that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think it goes back into boldness again. Because sometimes you have someone. There's not a lot of church discipline right now. This is not us being up on the church, because I don't like that whole program. I don't like that whole scene. I think it's too easy, and I think, if you want to get around uncorrupt people, you better stay inside, but you better not look in the mirror either.
Yeah.
So you better not make any noise either, because you might catch on the fact that you human too, right? But I think that it requires an objective no. I think it requires church discipline, though, right? Mm-hmm. Saying that, being bold enough to be like, hey, we don't do this here. We don't do this here. So, if someone came up and said something inappropriate to this person, or whatever, would I be in earshot and I heard that, I'd be like, you need to quit that garbage right now.
Yeah.
Stop that.
Yeah.
Because Jesus didn't have a problem. Jesus was gentle with Gentiles.
But
he was bold when it came to people who were supposed to be calling him God and calling him Lord.
Yeah.
He was really bold with that. He was like, you whitewashed tombs, you're this, you're that, You're supposed to know. The ones who were the Levites who were carrying the tabernacle, not tabernacle, Ark of the Covenant, sorry. Yep. Ark of the Covenant, thank you. People were carrying Ark of the Covenant, the reason why the Levites got struck dead is because they were trained and supposed to know better.
Yeah.
So I think that as a body, sometimes we have to, a lot of times, you might even lose your whole flock. For real, because it might be a bunch of gossiping busybodies that might be in your whole flock, and they all got to go.
Yeah, yeah.
But are you going to be bold, brave, and courageous, keeping in step with true north in order to do that?
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not. It's not. You get so caught, like I said, you get stagnant. We'll use stagnant as a cliche. A lot of times people get stagnant and comfortable where they are, and so they are afraid to go and say, hey, I'm going to be bold for Christ, and we don't do that here, but it's all about representation on how you do it. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's why Christ spoke a lot in parables, because if he would have gave them full power of who he was, they wouldn't have been able to digest it.
Nope.
They wouldn't have been able to, it was just too much meat. Just his power alone, for example, when he walked by the woman with the issue of blood and she touched him and the virtue came out of him, he felt that immediately. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because here's a person that's uncleansed and I had so much power in me, the virtue came out of me because of that power. So I think a lot of times is we operate in areas that we should not be operating in. For one. And it's because someone else put us in that area or trained us up. You're going to do this. You're going to be this. You're going to do that. And so we've gotten complacent and comfortable in an area in which we shouldn't be operating in the first place. And because we're untrained, untrainable in the position in which we hold, don't want to seek training because, hey, this person put me in this position. I've been in it for so many years, and I don't need the next person coming in telling me how to run my show. We fall short.
Right. But that goes back into not hearing what God positioned, put him in the first place.
Exactly.
It goes back into man's law versus objective truth.
Exactly.
So, okay. I think we can end it here, but I would say that I encourage us all in being these things rather than just talking about them.
Yep. Good word.
Yes.
There needs to be a decision after you hear this about what you're going to be.
Yeah.
Genuinely so. There needs to be an actual decision that you're going to write down on paper, on purpose, about you are going to make a vow to actually make sure that you have a true north and surround yourself with true north people. And those are rare. But they're out there. And the way you can find them is by being obedient and going towards true north in the first place. Because that's where everyone's going to converge. It's like, okay. It's kind of like, going to freedom. Harriet Tubman. Follow this constellation, I'll get there. And everyone else joined in. And they met up. It's like, okay, how did you know where to go? Follow this. Follow this constellation, I came here. I knew. Get the same map, you're going to meet in the same area. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it takes all these things to actually be that. And that's where the authority lies. And I think that we can change culture with all the violence and all the stuff that's going on right now. I think that if we're looking for the politicians, if we're looking for just everything outside of us, I'm going to put it that way.
Yeah.
If we're looking for everything outside of us to get the job done, we have literally lost our minds.
Yeah.
Straight up. I'll be that bold about it. That's where my authority's kicking in. Straight up, you've lost your mind. Because they don't know what true north is, so how in the world are they going to tell... Why is people who don't know true north telling the church how to find true north?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's fallacious. It doesn't make any actual sense. But now it's time to actually be bold enough to actually say, look, this is this, this is this, this is this, deal with it. And accept the consequences, and there will be consequences, but you're in the kingdom. Are you going to be bold enough to operate inside the kingdom and be brave enough to actually have that knowledge of the truth that's already in you to go ahead and act in the authority that God has given you? Or are you going to be courageous to actually go ahead and fulfill it out and manifest it in the world?
Yeah.
That's what he's asking of us. And that's why, I think this would take such a long time because, this is challenging. It is. It's challenging to literally ask, for God to be asking us right now, just straight up not to be liked by people. That includes family, friends, people went to high school with him. That includes all that. But do you want the consequences of what happens when we don't do that? Because I don't mean for this to sound like hot topic-y or anything like that. I really, really don't. When I look at a lot of these shooters recently, I see a bunch of young, lost kids who've been picked on and don't know how to interpret anything and don't know what true north even begins to look like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got the true north, the consequence of not giving it to them can be dire. Now, I'm not saying that is it our fault. No, it's the shooter's fault. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of people who don't have true north, who don't go around, blowing people away. So I'm not trying to blame anyone or put blame on like that, but I am saying that we do have a part to hold someone and get them through the cracks that they slip through.
Yeah.
Because people are not looking for those people.
Yeah.
They're not. We can do that. That's the one thing that we can do. And we don't have to lose people to the other side. In entertainment, in violence, in any of these things. We can go ahead and grab them through the cracks before they fall. And that's what we have to decide to do. It's a decision to do that. A decision. Okay. I think we're all wrapped up here. Any parting words before we hop off of here? I think we're good, though.
No, I think we're good. Good job.
Okay.
Great to have Pastor Davenport with us.
All right.
Thank
Real
you.
privilege.
Thank you.
Where can we find you at in terms of your vitals there, Pastor, Reverend Bishop, Apostle, Jumping Jack Flash?
I am. The fight must continue. I'm going to do some other things. I have some other things in mind. After this in this podcast, I really needed this tonight, guys. I thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
On here. And in the wake, do you guys mind?
No.
In the wake of me losing both of my cousins in Dayton, Ohio, to senseless crime, someone that just doesn't value life, I think both of you guys are absolutely right. The fight must continue.
Yeah.
We have to be that voice for all those loved ones, El Paso, North Carolina, Las Vegas, Florida, just to name a few, that did not, they did not, I'm not going to say they did not know Christ, or, the shooters did not know Christ, but just lost their way. The church has to be the voice. The church has to stand up, and now it's time that we must do something against it.
Yeah. In a bigger and bolder way than we probably ever had before. And whatever I encourage you, to people, whatever God's telling you, verify it with people who know true north. But it's not going to look conventional, probably. And it's going to take a lot of boldness to go ahead and do that. And the religious spirit is not going to like it. But that's okay. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us you can find me at justinfoxmedia.com. Find Shamar Keith on Twitter on Shamar Keith Says.
Nope, that is Instagram.
Instagram. Okay, I knew that. I was
Keith
just testing
Says.
you.
Twitter is at Keith Shamar.
Okay, I was just testing you to make sure that you knew what it was.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And you can find me on Facebook under Daemon Davenport. I'm also on Instagram as well. And then I am now leading a charge to start a movement talking about We Take a Stand. So those pages will be coming up in the near future. So,
all right. Well, bless you guys, and let's go ahead and pray out. Lord God Almighty, we thank you so much, Lord Jesus, for igniting us, Lord God Almighty, having us understand the power and the charge, Lord God Almighty, that you have put into our lives, Lord God Almighty. Let us not run, let us not be weak, let us not be weary, Lord God Almighty, in well-doing, Lord Jesus. But let us hang on every word that you say, Lord Jesus, and not on that of the world. I pray these things, and I speak these things as well, Lord God Almighty, that you would give us boldness, courage, bravery, and that you would stay focused in on you, Lord Jesus. I speak these things over all of us, and I thank you, Lord God Almighty, for your deliverance. All in Jesus' mighty and matchless name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.